outcomes and lower life expectancy than metropolitan Australia. And this inequity has persisted for generations, and it is entirely unacceptable. And this is why I will never, ever stop fighting for a greenfield, single-site hospital at Albury-Wodonga. Albury-Wodonga Health is the largest health service between Sydney and Melbourne, the only cross-border health service in the country, and it's stretched across 2 separate hospital campuses. As the population on the border grows, Albury-Wodonga Health is only going to get busier. By 2040, we will need a hospital capable of handling 150,000 emergency presentations, 40,000 surgeries and 1,900 births every single year. In 2021, future challenges were recognised when Albury-Wodonga Health's clinical services plan found splitting service delivery across 2 campuses created significant risks to patient safety. It recommended in black and white that Albury-Wodonga Health should and must consolidate services to a single site. In October 2022, just prior to 2 state elections, the New South Wales and Victorian premiers flew into Albury and announced $558 million to redevelop the current Albury Hospital. Now, I cautiously welcomed this announcement. I didn't want to let the perfect get in the way of the good, but we know now this announcement is nowhere near good and nowhere near enough. In 2018, the New South Wales government spent $723 million to build Tweed Valley Hospital for a catchment size similar to ours. In 2022, the Victorian government committed up to $675 million to build a new greenfield hospital in West Gippsland to service 60,000 people. So why then would the state governments only allocate $225 million each to our region of 300,000 people? Our worries were confirmed. A letter sent from Albury-Wodonga Health's Chief Executive and Chair to the State Health Ministers was revealed, and it stated that the $558 million, and I quote, will not deliver the government's policy intent of a single-site hospital. It's not just about the money. There isn't enough land on the intended site to build a bigger hospital with more theatres, more beds and enough car parking in an area with virtually no public transport. I acknowledge the Albury and Wodonga mayors met with the Victorian Minister for Health only yesterday, but were disappointed in the outcome of the meeting. The case was clear in 2021 and it's still clear in 2025. We need a greenfield single-site hospital on the border. The states can't deliver this alone, and the Commonwealth Government must come to the table.
I call the Assistant Minister for Mental Health and Suicide Prevention, Rural and Regional Health.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Like so many locals growing up on the coast, I spent many long, hot summers swimming at the entrance ocean bars with my brothers and sister. In 2018, our family was honoured when the Central Coast Council unanimously voted to rename the baths after my late father, Grant. In recognition of his campaign to save, restore and heritage list the baths in the early 2000s for our community. Before the last election, I committed $250,000 towards the ocean baths as part of a broader $1 million package to revitalise the entrance. Workers included new shade sails and upgrades to the clubhouse. New pumps and pipes have now significantly improved water quality, and I've heard from many locals at the baths, when I'm at the baths myself, who've told me what a difference this has made for regular swimmers, for visitors, for the Tuggerah Toughs, which my father was a proud patron of, and the Entrance Amateur Swimming Club. Towards the end of last year, the community came together to celebrate these upgrades. My brother Nick joined the swimming race, cheered on by his #1 fan, my mum Barbie, and a special thank you to my brother Iggy, who cooked the excellent barbecue, which was enjoyed by everybody. Deputy Speaker, I'm proud to have delivered on my election commitment of $100,000 for Wyong Tennis to resurface their main courts. I recently joined the Wednesday Ladies Tennis for a match, and they told me how much upgrades have improved play and safety and encouraged new members to join the club. Wyong Tennis has for over a century been a place for people to meet, play and stay active. It was the first place where I learnt to play tennis, and I'm so proud to have been able to make this commitment to Wyong District Tennis Association. And I want to thank Leonie Baldwin from the Tennis Club for the work that she's done on behalf of that club and our community. Deputy Speaker, In case you didn't know, when it comes to food manufacturing, it's all happening on the central coast of New South Wales.
Yeah.
Australian and globally recognised brands like Sanitarium and Mars produce some of our country's most beloved pantry staples and snacks, and right in the heart of my community. I'm so proud that working alongside Central Coast Industry Connect and the University of Newcastle, that they've been able to secure more than $17 million for the Ourimbah Food Manufacturing Hub. This is government working together with industry and research to be able to provide significant investment in a quality project that will create hundreds of jobs in one of the biggest sectors in our community. Recently, just before Christmas in fact, I had the opportunity to visit stage 1 of the hub, which has opened at the Ourimbah University campus, and work is well underway on the permanent home nearby. I congratulate Frank Zammit, Central Coast Industry Connect, and all who've been part of this project.
I call the member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Since being re-elected in May 2022, it has been a really amazing 3 years working alongside the community of Lindsay for our fair share, and there's certainly been a lot of fights along the way, and that is fighting against what the Albanese Labor government is trying to do to my community when it comes to ripping infrastructure funding away and having a complete disregard for the people who live there. Together, the people of Lindsay and I have continued to fight against the Albanese Labor government's go slow on Dunheved Road. The Labor Party promised to fast-track the upgrade to Dunheved Road, and they did this during the 2022 election to try and win the seat. However, it is now 2 years behind schedule, a broken promise to the people of Lindsay. We've also fought against cuts to Mulgoa Road and semi-rural roads leading to Western Sydney Airport. The government just doesn't understand the Coalition's vision for our new airport and the opportunities it will bring for the people of Western Sydney. We need investment in the roads that will connect Western Sydney to our new airport. We want Mulgoa Road finished, as committed to by the Albanese Labor government. It is not right that they have taken away funding to finish the job properly. Thank you to everyone who has been vocal in restoring funding for this vital project to decongest our roads around Glenmore Park, Regentville and Jemison Town. Our community has been frustrated, and that's probably a mild way to put it, on the issue of flight paths to and from Western Sydney Airport. Since the Labor government has come into office, the people have had nothing, as I said, but contempt from this government, or disregard for what is right. The Infrastructure Minister released a midnight media release rather than coming to Penrith and speaking to people about the impacts of the flight paths on our community. We are the most impacted electorate. There were, of course, beneficial changes for the Blue Mountains, represented by Labor. These decisions should not be political, but based on strong community consultation. There have been many great community events on a positive, including celebrating the London Show, Penrith Christmas tree lighting and so much more. We have had rallies on the Voice in St Mary's and roundtables on women's health, small business, manufacturing and housing. A highlight was restoring the Emu Plains Anzac Day ceremony along the Emu Plains Lions, the Penn Historical Society, Penrith RSL members, Girl Guides, Emu Plains churches and our Piper Tim Badger. I'll always fight for our amazing community from Londonderry to Luddenham and Regentville to Colleton. Thank you.
Call the member for Canberra.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise today to talk about the importance of properly funding public education.
Hear, hear.
Public education plays such an important role in ensuring that all Australians have the best opportunities in life, the best start in life to pursue whatever it is that they want, and that journey begins right at school with their amazing teachers. I was proud to attend public schools here in the ACT, and that was what I got from that, was the message that anyone can achieve anything. I had amazing teachers, and now my son, who's just started year 2, and my daughter, who's just started preschool, they have amazing teachers in our public school system here in the ACT. Back when the Gonski Review set out a clear objective to ensure that every Australian school is funded to meet the needs of the students based on a range of characteristics of those schools. It is a simple principle that schools should have the resources to give every child the best possible start in life. And that is why Labor has always championed full and fair funding for our public schools. And I am so proud that our Albanese Labor government, through the leadership of Minister for Education, Jay Sinclair, are delivering the Better and Fairer Schools Agreement, which wants to see every public school around this country fully funded. It means an extra $16 billion of additional investment put on the table for states and territories to agree to. And I'm really proud to say that the ACT has already signed this agreement, and this means an extra $110.5 million to ACT public schools over the next 5 years. I'm also proud to say that thanks to the ACT Labor government and our ACT Minister Yvette Berry, that the ACT was already fully funded to that 100% of needs-based funding, and that was the only jurisdiction in Australia to do that, because we understand the importance that this is one of the most important things that governments can do to ensure the best for our constituents and all Australians. So with this additional funding, that's going to put some extra funding into all the schools in my electorate and all of them in the ACT to ensure that every child has the best start and that teachers are supported to do the things that they want to do best. This includes ensuring that every student has the tools that they need to catch up, keep up and finish school. So engaging early where students might need a little extra support and ensuring the funding is there to deliver that. It's about making sure that every child, no matter where they live or their circumstances, has the support they need to get the best out of their education. So I want to say thank you to the Minister and thank you to our government. This is a fantastic investment for Australia.
I call the member for Flinders.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Last week I had the honour to officially open the new comprehensive cancer centre at the Base Hospital in Main Street, Mornington, built with funds provided from the Coalition Government back in 2019. This new facility will provide radiation oncology, day infusion centre, a 20 to 30 bed inpatient facility, consultation and education space for both breast and prostate cancer support nurses, and education and meeting spaces for community and general practitioners. It will change the lives of local cancer patients. A one-stop shop for all cancer-related services, much closer to home, avoiding the daily, weekly or in some cases fortnightly commute up to Frankston, or in the cases of many families, including my own, up to Melbourne to obtain specialist oncology care. The Wellness Centre, which was completed with a generous $600,000 donation from the Community Bank Mount Martha, a branch of the Bendigo Bank, provides a space for support groups and things like yoga and other bits and pieces. I thank Bruce Rankin, Chair of the Board and now a local councillor, for everything that this extraordinary bank branch does for our community. From healthcare to sporting facilities to local events and festivals, the peninsula would not be paradise without this little bank. The Bays has partnered with Icon Cancer Care to bring the very latest in radiation oncology services to the peninsula, giving us access to this top-tier treatment. I had a tour from David Blakely, who showed me the extraordinary equipment, including the HyperArc, which will make diagnosis and treatment safe, comfortable, precise and quick. The HyperArc delivers radiation therapy through its devices and can accurately target multiple tumours while ensuring limited doses of radiation go to surrounding healthy brain tissue, reducing the impact of side effects compared to traditional radiation on the brain, including headaches and hair loss, therefore contributing to general well-being and confidence through one's treatment. Mark Middleton, the CEO of Icon, joined us at the opening, together with patron saint of this project and my dear good friend, Professor the Honourable Greg Hunt, the former Minister for Health and the former Member for Flinders. Cancer care is vital to my community. 25% of all Australian cancer diagnoses occur in Victoria, and the risk of developing cancer doubles between the ages of 50 and 60 and 60 and 70. Almost 90,000 people in my electorate have private health care, and we hold the record, apparently, of having the highest private health insurance benefits per member. This important facility will be used and valued by a community in this much-loved community-based not-for-profit hospital, where generations of Peninsula families have gone for births, breaks, bouts of disease, cancer and end-of-life care. I congratulate Jade Phelan, CEO, and Brett Gallagher, Chair of the Board, for continuing exceptional care and leadership of this enduring local institution. This investment, together with the $2.6 million investment in Alexandra Park Pavilion, which I opened last August, and the Rosebud Clinical Trials Hub, the opening of which I attended with Greg Hunt in December 21, is hard won by the community of Flinders.
Division has been called for in the House. The proceedings are suspended to enable honourable members to attend the division, and the proceedings will resume when the chair is resumed at the end of the division or subsequent divisions. I call the Assistant Minister to the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Perth sent me to this place in 2022 to turn our local values into national results. And every day of this term, that is exactly what I have done. My community believes in the opportunity that comes from a great education, and the investments that we are making in education in Perth are making a difference now and well into the future. You can't walk through the Perth electorate without seeing the iconic ECU City campus springing to life out of the ground. In 2023, I was honoured to be there for the sod turning ceremony, and next year students will arrive to start or complete their education on everything from business, IT, through to arts and performing arts. And if those students are at that campus and they have a student loan, they'll get 20% off their student debt under a re-elected Albanese Labor government. Same story for student loans for anyone who's studying at Northbridge TAFE, East Perth TAFE, Mount Lawley TAFE or Leederville TAFE. And we're not just delivering for those in their tertiary studies, we're delivering for our littlest learners. From investing in early childhood education at centres such as Casamia Montessori, Yokine Playgroup and others through the delivery of our cheaper childcare policy, and what we are doing in Parliament this fortnight, delivering the legislation that will see the abolition of the unfair and unnecessary childcare subsidy activity test, making sure that 3 days of subsidised early childhood education is available for every child in Perth who needs it. Similarly, we have funded our local primary schools, delivering bespoke funding for schools like Osborne Park Primary School, Maylands Peninsula, St Paul's Catholic Primary School, Ashfield Primary and the Australian Islamic College in Dianella. At the same time, we have signed the agreement. It was an honour to be there with the Minister for Education, the Prime Minister and Premier Roger Cook last year as we signed the Better and Fairer Schools Agreement for Western Australia to fully fund our public schools across the great state. Then it comes to the importance of the value of fairness. And there's nothing more fair than making sure that people have access to health based on need rather than how much money they have in the bank. And it's that value of fairness that we have delivered by opening the Rudlock Road Morley Urgent Care Clinic. And more than 10,000 of my constituents have walked through the doors of that urgent care clinic to get the care that they need, at the same time as taking pressure off Royal Perth Hospital and taking pressure off Midland Hospital, amongst others. We opened this term Headspace Osborne Park to support young people in Perth who are managing their mental health, to give them the support they need and deserve. And we have opened the Morley-Ellenbrook line, making sure that we delivered on a train line that had been promised by so many sides of politics over so long. It was opened by a federal and state Labor government, delivering on our commitment to deliver for public transport across Perth.
I call the member for Fairfax.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I am deeply concerned about small businesses across the Sunshine Coast, many of which are struggling enormously. Unless you're involved yourself directly in a small business, often you don't know how hard they're doing it. We see for lease signs right across the region, but these empty shops are only really the tip of the iceberg. Right across Australia, we know, under this Labor government, 27,000 businesses have gone under. 27,000 businesses have gone insolvent. Now, the Sunshine Coast is not immune to that. In fact, we've been directly in the firing line. According to ASIC data, that sector of the economy most impacted has been the construction sector, constituting around about 27% of all insolvencies. If you look at the Sunshine Coast, the sector which has the highest number of registered businesses is the construction sector. In other words, our biggest sector with the most businesses is the very sector most impacted by Labor government policy and the rate of insolvencies. ASIC say that the second sector most impacted is that of accommodation, food, hospitality. Again, a major sector on the Sunshine Coast, which is why so many of our residents, amidst a cost of living crisis, are doing it especially tough because they either own a small business or they work for a small business. And those which aren't closing their doors are struggling enormously. They're on their knees trying to make ends meet. For the Coalition's part, this is why we have been unashamedly pro-small business, ensuring we have plans to help small business. As part of that, we have announced that we'll be extending the asset value eligible for the instant asset write-off up to $30,000 and making it permanent. We'll be introducing a capped deduction of up to $20,000 for business-related meal expenses, giving our hospitality sector the real boost it needs. On industrial relations, we'll be reversing the damaging aspects of Labor's complex industrial relations reforms, including returning to a simple definition of a casual worker. In other areas, we'll be cutting red tape, we'll be making energy cheaper, cleaner and more consistent. We need to return to the days where small business is treated with the respect they deserve. That's what a coalition government will do.
I call the member for McEwen.
Thank you very much. Talking about small business, I'll remind the member opposite it was them, their government, that actually removed the small business asset right off until we stood up and fought and got it back. Today I want to rise as a proud member for McEwen, a community and a place that I've lived most of my adult life. As a local to our area, I was affected by the endless cuts and empty promises under successive Liberal national governments. I spent every day driving around the roads in our electorate, spending our time in our communities and watching my grandkids grow up there as well. I know the devastating impact the years of neglect from the Liberals have had on our community. The Coalition was too busy funding things like North Sydney swimming pools under regional grants or car park reward schemes than look after our community. Being a local, I've listened to many and had many conversations on the need for infrastructure and the ongoing investment in our community. Unlike the Coalition, who treat our electorate as a place to put their seat shopping candidates from outside McEwen, they drop in, they make empty promises, fly in, fly out, go away and nothing happens. Whether it was the deterioration of our roads and the collapse of government services, where Victoria was cut down to 7% of infrastructure funding. This shows the record of the previous Coalition's government's inability to actually look after and work for our people. No one will be better off under a Coalition government, that's just a fact. With the Liberals being anti-worker and a history of not being proactive or taking responsibility, their ideology did irrevocable harm to our communities, simply because they did not do their job. Since the Albanese Labor government has been elected, our area is finally getting the federal investment we need. In this term alone, we have seen record investment into the electorate. We have seen a massive commitment by the federal Albanese Labor government to create safer roads within our community. Whether it be $90 million for Watson Street ramps, $280 million for the Yanyan Road Stage 2, or another $900 million for Cameron Lane Interchange, Beveridge Intermodal Precincts, which means jobs in our community. And I'm continuing to work with local councils and push the Victorian State Government to promptly use this funding and deliver these projects. As someone that does a lot of driving in the electorate, I get the frustration about the quality of our roads and look forward to seeing the federal funding make roads safer after 9 years of neglect. We've seen mobile phone towers go up in Donnybrook, Wollert, Bullingarook, Goldie, Woodend and two in Gisborne South, filling crucial gaps of connectivity within our community, particularly in times of disaster. I remember the Coalition government making multiple appeals for ministers to look past the politics and see the real need for this funding. We even secured coalition agreements that got killed in their multiple leadership fights, leaving our community at risk. We are delivering on our election commitments. Macedon Rangers Sports Precinct, $15 million, $5.5 million for Mitchell Roads, $5.5 million for Macedon Rangers Road, $1.5 million for the Doreen Splash Park, $1.5 million for Diamond Creek Pool and $500,000 for the Lower Green Hills Reserve upgrade. This scratches the surface of what our government is doing, including restoring doctors' payments to make it cheaper and easier to see a doctor.
The member for Dawson.
Thank you. Deputy Speaker, Australia Day is more than just a public holiday. It's a time to reflect on our history, appreciate our freedoms and celebrate the values that unite us. Each year, the Australia Day Awards shine a light on the quiet achievers, those who dedicate their time, energy and passion to helping others without seeking recognition. Through volunteer work, community service, environmental efforts, sporting achievements or cultural contributions, these individuals and groups strengthen the fabric of our society. I attended a number of Australia Day Awards across the electorate of Dawson, and I'm honoured to congratulate a long list of winners. Awards recipients for Mackay were Citizen of the Year, Rebecca Cooper; Young Citizen of the Year, Murray McGrady; Laurie Burgess Community Volunteer, Bonnie Spratt; Brendan Borrellini Access and Inclusion Achievement, Peter Sumpter; Sports Awards, Lutie Vandenberg; Young Sports, Monique Bomgoni; Arts and Culture, Stephen Pritchard; Environmental Achievement, Maya Harrison; Community Group, North Mackay Sinkers. Awards for the recipients of Whitsundays were Citizen of the Year, Matt Stokes; Young Citizen of the Year, Cooper Grucock. Merrill Awards were for Dr Arthur Tresice, Brittany O'Brien and Susan Gravel. Volunteer of the Year Award, Natasha O'Neill. Community Group, Whitsunday Brahmins. Senior Sportsperson, Michael Kimpton. Young Sportsperson, Julie Portolini. Environmental Achievement, Eco Barge Clean Seas. Well done, Libby. Arts and Cultural, Seagrass Theatre and Music Company. Australia Day Achievement Awards for outstanding members of Queensland SES, Susan Connors and Kevin Maud. Awards for recipients for Burdekin, Citizen of the Year, Scott McLean. Young Citizen of the Year, Nicole Savoni. Young Citizen of the Year, Jacob Matchin. Community Event of the Year, Guru State High School 100-Year Fete. Community Event of the Year Achievement, the 2024 Burdekin Water Festival, Bring It Back. Volunteer of the Year, Ben Laurie, Kelly Laurie and Bella Laurie. Volunteer of the Year Achievement, Mark Vass. Cultural Award, Jacob Matchin. Junior Sportsperson of the Year, Ashley Coles. Senior Sportsperson of the Year, Jennifer Fortonis and Christy Wasmuth. Lifetime of Service Gold, Betty Durant and Gwen Marshall. Lifetime of Service Silver, Joan Anderson, Shirley Gilmore and Linda Scott. Unfortunately, nominees for my electorate in Townsville missed out this time around. I would like to take this opportunity to say a big thank you. We are so proud of you.
Thank you. The member for Blaxland.
Here.
Bankstown RSL is almost 100 years old, and for more than half a century, a bloke named Bruce Paull has been at the heart of it, looking after veterans, their families and the local community. A few years ago, I was told a story about ashes under the flagpole at the old Bankstown RSL. It was a story that's stuck with me to this day. At the old club under the flagpole near the bowling green, there were ashes of 4 veterans, blokes who loved the club so much that when they passed away, they didn't want to be buried in a cemetery, they wanted to be buried at their club. They wanted to be where their mates had a drink. They wanted to be near their friends. And when the new club was built a couple of years ago, Bruce made sure that they weren't left behind. As chairman, he made sure that those ashes were put into the foundations of the new club, so that these 4 blokes could still be with their mates. That's the sort of bloke that Bruce Paull is. For 56 years, he's been serving our returning servicemen and women, their families and the wider Bankstown community, making sure that the club's not just a building, that it really is a home. But in March of this year, an era comes to an end. Bruce is stepping down as chairman. Bruce was born in a little town called Boggabri in 1947. When he was 20 years old, he was called up to serve in Vietnam. And he spent just over a year there in the 1st Australian Reinforcement Unit and the 4th Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment. Like so many other Vietnam veterans, coming home wasn't easy. Finding his place again was hard. But Bankstown RSL gave him that. They encouraged him to get involved, and he took on the role first as sports officer, and that really gave him something that he needed, a sense of belonging. And he gave back big time. Over the years, he's been a director, vice chairman, and for the last 15 years, chairman of Bankstown RSL. Now, if you know Bruce, you'll know that he's not one for the spotlight, and if he had his way, he'd be telling me to shut up right now. He certainly wouldn't want me talking about him in the Australian Parliament. But when someone gives as much as Bruce has, you have to stop and say thank you. Yeah. Bruce stepping down is a big loss for the club, but it's a big win for his family, for his wife Lynn, his daughter Ashley and son-in-law Dave, and his 4 grandkids. Roy, Mabel, Paddy and Lennox. We'll get to see a bit more of their granddad. They're the kids that have softened him up over the years. So Bruce, on behalf of our whole local community, thank you so much for everything that you've done for us.
Thank you. In accordance with Standing Order 193, the time for members' constituency statements has concluded. I'll call the clerk.
Government business, order of the day number 1, Customs Amendment, expedited seizure and disposal of engineered stone bill 2024, resumption of debate on second reading.
The question is that this bill be now read a second time, and I call the member for Spence.
Thank you, Speaker. I wanted to start just by acknowledging the previous speaker when we were in the other chamber before this came to the Federation chamber, the member for Bendigo, and her fine contribution. And the reason why I want to start there is because it'd be no surprise to members in this place and in the other that the member for Bendigo, along with the member for Monash, the co-chairs for the Parliamentary Friends of Asbestos-Related Disease. And I do that because I think it's a really important starting place to recognise the work that they have done in raising awareness in relation to dust-related diseases in this place, to ensure that legislation like the bill that we're talking on today has been brought forward, and that the safety of people in our communities is put at the forefront. And whilst they chair the Parliamentary Friendship Group, there are a lot of members of this place and senators in the other place who are part of that group, myself being one of them, and the work that gets done in that friendship group is very, very much required to raise awareness in our communities and to give passage to this type of work that we're speaking about today. Now, the Customs Amendment Expedited Seizure and Disposal of Engineered Stone Bill 2024. This is the last of a suite of measures that deal with engineered stone and in particular silicosis. When I was elected to Parliament in 2022, having come from a working class background representing workers for a period of time, short period of time before I came to this place, worker safety is something that was at the forefront of my mind coming here, and I really did look forward to the opportunity to be able to be part of debate that puts forward laws that better protect workers in this country. And it is an absolute honour to be actually able to be part of a government that is getting on with the job of protecting workers, because that's what good Labor Party and Labor governments do. We take the needs of workers across this country and put it at the forefront in the policy work that we do in this place to ensure that they are safer, to ensure that the community is safer. And it's something that I'm extremely proud to be part of in conjunction with the Albanese Labor government. In particular, this bill is part of our government's process that will lift and advance measures that protect workers, a continuation of the legacy that we will see in this bill. We know that when workers aren't protected, the negative outcomes on the job, they don't come home, including the risk of diseases, which is what we are talking about here today. Preventing this is a big reason why I'm part of the Labor Party, and it's why I'm proud to be part of our government, taking meaningful action to reduce the risk of silica-related diseases occurring in workplaces and beyond in this country. Engineered stone, why is it so bad? Well, it contains crystalline silica, and the risk it carries related to silicosis and silica-related diseases is something that workers must be protected from. The impact of diseases that come from harmful dust produced on the job, which then can devastate a person's respiratory system, is significant. Asbestos is one of those dusts which is something people in my community and across the country have grappled with for decades and continues to cause significant harm in this country. And I want to give a shout out to the Asbestos Victims Association of South Australia. They are a fantastic voluntary-led organisation in my community who have raised awareness around asbestos, but also have expanded that scope to dust-related diseases. They come together yearly in Salisbury at Pittman Park for Remembrance Day of those people who have lost their lives from asbestos. And the reason why I raise this is because it is very relevant to where we currently stand right now. We're on the precipice of a second wave of dust-related diseases in this country. And without the measures that we're talking about today, without the measures that we have introduced since coming to government in 2022, more people would be being remembered at events like the one at Pittman Park on a yearly basis in November. The association does some fantastic work with a lot of outreach to families and people that are dealing with mesothelioma and other asbestos-related diseases. I'm not sure if people in the House realise this, but an estimated 4,000 people die every single year in Australia from asbestos-related diseases. Of that number, and this is estimated in 2019, 3,307 were due to lung cancer. Asbestos-related lung cancer contributes to 30% of all cancer deaths in Australia. 802 were due to mesothelioma, which accounted for 99% of all deaths from that disease. 148 were due to asbestosis, and 144 were due to ovarian cancer, as well as 48 from cancer of the larynx. Each and every one of these diseases are absolutely debilitating, having profound effects on family and friends around the affected individual. And that 4,000 is part of an estimated 219,000 worldwide. That's as of 2016. The risks harmful dust carry are exceptionally long-lasting, and while asbestos has long been phased out, then subsequently banned in totality in Australia in 2003, dust-based illnesses still exist in workplaces in the world today. So to talk about silica and silica-based illnesses, it's estimated that 600,000 people, according to the 2021 National Dust Disease Task Force final report, are potentially being exposed to silica dust each year. That includes miners, construction workers, engineers, plumbers, handy persons, heavy vehicle drivers, farmers, machine operators, animal and horticultural workers, scientists, metal workers and electrical workers. The risk is so widespread. In 2012, a survey of the Australian working population found that 6.6% of the Australian workforce, 329,000 people, were exposed to silica dust when on the job, with just over half that number exposed to particularly heavy levels. That is hundreds of thousands of people, everyday people, exposed to disease that can cause permanent damage or death. And as numerous diagnoses of silicosis among workers in the stone benchtop fabrication and installation industry has been revealed, there is pressing need to ensure the materials and practices that expose Aussies are managed. So that's why under our watch, under Labor's watch, the manufacture, supply, processing, installation of engineered stone benchtops, panels and slabs was banned on 1 July 2024, something I'm extremely proud of being part of. And following on from that, all crystalline silica substances are now subject to stronger regulations as of 1 September last year. And both of these changes apply to all materials containing at least 1% crystalline silica, including engineered stone. The importation of engineered stone was prohibited on 1 January this year, also further tightening these regulations. And this is progress we want to see, but the job isn't done. More steps need to be taken to protect our communities. That's why this bill is so important. It's giving powers to the Australian Border Force to destroy seized engineered stone immediately. Now, similar provisions exist for tobacco products, for vapes, dangerous and perishable goods and illicit drugs seized at the border. And we all know that engineered stone can cause significant harm like those products, and it's only right that it's treated similarly. Without this amendment, that seized stone needs to be stored, and at a significant volume too, which is significantly difficult and will take capacity away from Border Force to do the rest of its job and duties. This process needs to be efficient. We want our Border Force operators in this country to be doing the things that they need to do to keep our borders safe. So giving them the ability to be able to dispose of this in a timely manner will free up their resources so that they can better protect our borders, something that we are extremely proud of. Silicosis is incredibly damaging to the lives and livelihoods of Australians and their families, and it's up to governments like ours to protect Australians from that threat. That's what our Labor government has done and will continue to do. I just wanted to finish. I've had the misfortune of watching close friends in my family circle pass away from asbestos-related diseases, and it is one of the most cruelest things you can see. And when you speak to representatives from the AMWU and other unions that represent workers from the types of exposure areas that we see with manufactured stone and other silica-related products, these are young men and women who have gone to work expecting to come home the same way they went there, healthy, of strong and sound mind and body. And unfortunately, that's not the case for some of these workers. They are often 19, 20, 21 years old. They are indiscriminately exposed, unaware of the potential risk and problems that they are going to face moving forward in their life. And unfortunately, tragically, for some of those people, their lives have been cut tragically short. And it's an absolute travesty. It's why good governments need to legislate to protect workers that are young, that don't ask the questions, that don't say no. And, you know, I see the member for Hunter in the chamber right now. He knows all too well, like I do, working on the job. Sometimes it's hard to say no and stop the job and stand up for safety principles that matter, that keep you safe on the job. That's why you need governments to legislate to protect workers, to ensure that they have the rights in the workplace, that regardless of their personal understanding, they remain safe on the job. Stopping the import of products into this country, ensuring that we have the right frameworks to stop unsafe practices in this country of silica-based products is a very big step in making sure that we protect the young men and women that are taking out their trade apprenticeships and working in these manufacturing areas. So I'm extremely proud that this bill here before the House today completes a raft of fantastic bills that we have brought forward to deal with silica-related diseases, and I commend this bill to the House.
Thank you. The question is that the bill be now read a second time, and I call the member for Hunter. Actually, I'll stop the member for Hunter. A division has been called for in the House. The proceedings are suspended to enable honourable members to attend the division. The proceedings will resume when the Chair of the Federation Chamber is resumed at the conclusion of the division or subsequent divisions.
on the Customs Amendment, Expedited Seizure and Disposal of Engineered Stone Bill 2024. There was a time when asbestos was widely used and considered safe. It was an affordable and common material in construction, found in homes, schools and countless other structures. We believed it to be a great innovation, resistant to heat and corrosion. But Speaker, we now know the devastating health risks that we discovered later. Inhaling asbestos fibres led to severe respiratory diseases, including lung cancer, asbestosis and mesothelioma. Workers paid the price with their health and too often their lives. Now in 2025 we are facing a similar challenge. Another widely used material, engineered stone, is proving to be extremely dangerous. It is commonly found in bench tops, panels and slabs across Australian homes and workplaces. However, we know that exposure to respirable crystalline silica from engineered stone can cause deadly diseases, including silicosis. When a material is found to be unsafe, it is the government's responsibility to act. Those most at risk, workers who handle this material daily, deserve protection. That's why on the 1st of July last year, Australia took a decisive action. In a world-first move, we joined with states and territories to ban the use, manufacture, supply, processing and installation of engineered stone benchtops, panels and slabs. Just as we led the way on asbestos regulation, Australia is now setting the global standard in eliminating engineered stone. Other nations are watching and will follow suit soon. When I spoke on this legislation in 2023, I made it clear every worker has the right to return home from work safe. And nothing has changed. No one should suffer long-term, life-threatening illnesses because of their job, especially illnesses that only manifest years later. We must ensure that workers who have contributed so much to our country do not spend their retirement battling preventable diseases. Speaker, last year I met with Mark, a former stonemason diagnosed with silicosis at just the age of 35. He shared how his once promising career was cut short, leaving him battling a life-threatening disease. His story is not unique. Countless workers face the same fate. This legislation is here for them. The prohibition of engineered stone is a critical step in safeguarding Australian workers, but a ban alone is not enough. There is no point in outlawing a material if it can still enter the country and be used. That's why on the 1st of January 2025 we reinforced our commitment by prohibiting the importation of engineered stone. This bill strengthens that prohibition by enhancing the powers under the Customs Act to seize and dispose of prohibited engineered stone effectively. It provides us with the tools needed to fully eliminate engineered stone from Australia. Implementing this ban presents us with unique challenges. Engineered stone products are bulky and managing seized materials at the border requires storage, transport, disposal and administration, each posing logistical difficulties. This bill addresses these challenges by allowing for the immediate destruction of prohibited engineered stone upon seizure. This approach is not unprecedented. The same process is already in place for other prohibited imports such as tobacco products, vapes, dangerous goods, perishable items and illicit drugs. Items that pose serious risks to all Australians. The Australian Border Force, the ABF, plays a critical role in preventing these harmful goods from entering the country. However, if we do not enable them to efficiently enforce the engineered stone ban, it will hinder their ability to regulate other critical border operations, as I spoke about earlier. This amendment ensures the ABF can effectively enforce the ban while maintaining focus on other prohibited imports. Without this amendment, seized engineered stone will accumulate, placing additional strain on Border Force resources. The efficient disposal of this material is essential for streamlining compliance process and enabling the ABF to allocate resources where they are most needed. It is important to note that this change will only impact importers who attempt to bring engineered stone containing crystalline silica into the country and subsequently have their goods seized. The import prohibition is designed to complement the domestic ban under workplace health and safety laws. Given that almost all engineered stone in Australia is imported, this measure provides an additional layer of deterrence at the border. To support enforcement, the government has allocated $32.1 million over 2 years in the 2024-2025 budget for the ABF to carry out its role effectively. This amendment also ensures the transparency. Within 7 days of disposing of seized goods, the ABF must issue a notice identifying the goods, detailing how they were handled and explaining the reason for disposal. Additionally, importers retain the right to challenge the disposal and seek recovery of market value if they can prove that the required conditions of destruction were not met. Engineered stone is widespread, and understandably business have questions about what this ban means for them.
A division has been called for in the House. The proceedings are suspended to enable honourable members to attend the division. Proceedings will resume when the Chair of the Federation Chamber is resumed at the conclusion of the division or subsequent divisions. question is that the bill be now read a second time. I call the member for Hunter in continuation.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The reality is simple. From the 1st of July 2024, working with engineered stone benchtops, panels, slabs is prohibited. No business or individual is allowed to manufacture, supply, process or install these products. This aligns with our national commitment to eliminating this hazardous material. Importantly, this prohibition does not apply to porcelain, sintered stone products or finished engineered stone items that do not require further modification, such as jewellery, sculptures, garden ornaments and kitchen sinks. Businesses that need to remove, repair, modify or dispose of engineered stone must notify their WHS regulator, except in Victoria where different arrangements apply. Some states and territories have adopted transitional measures for contracts signed before December 31st, 2023, allowing limited work with engineered stone until the end of 2024. It is also important to clarify that the Commonwealth Government is not providing compensation for the engineered stone industry. Since the prohibition is being implemented across all Australian jurisdictions, compensation decisions rest with the individual states and territories. At the core of this policy is worker safety, Deputy Speaker. This prohibition is about protecting Australians from preventable harm. By ensuring the ABF have the authority to promptly dispose of seized engineered stone will reinforce the ban and prevent unnecessary risks to workers' health. Moreover, this measure strengthens the enforcement of all prohibited products, imports, ensuring that its efforts are to eliminate engineered stone do not compromise the do not compromise the regulation of other dangerous goods. The implementation of this ban is a test to our government's commitment to prioritising worker safety and public health over industry convenience. We have seen the tragic consequences of inaction in the past, particularly in cases like asbestos. By acting decisively now, we are preventing another generation of workers from suffering the debilitating and fatal illnesses linked with respirable crystalline silica. This legislation ensures that our policies are not just words on a paper, but are backed by concrete enforcement mechanisms that make a real difference. Australia is leading the way globally in this fight against silicosis and silica-related diseases. Other nations are closely watching how we implement and enforce this ban, as they too grapple with the growing evidence of harm posed by engineered stone. By setting this precedent, we are demonstrating that workers' health and safety must come as a priority and must come before profit and convenience. Our approach, combining a comprehensive ban with strong enforcement mechanisms, sends a clear message that we will not tolerate the continued endangerment of Australian workers. Furthermore, this bill is a step forward in modernising our border protection policies. The Australian Border Force plays a critical role in ensuring that only safe and compliant goods enter our country. By allowing for the immediate destruction of seized engineered stone, we are reducing the bureaucratic red tape and ensuring that enforcement is swift and effective. Without this amendment, the Border Force would be overwhelmed by stone and management of seized materials, ultimately diverting resources away from other critical areas of border security. This ban is also an opportunity for Australian manufacturers are ready to invest in safer alternatives, such as sintered stone and porcelain, creating new jobs in sustainable industries. Speaker, this legislation strengthens our ability to enforce the prohibition on engineered stone, ensuring that it cannot continue to be the silent killer in Australian workplaces. By enhancing the Australian Border Force's authority to seize and immediately dispose of prohibited engineered stone, we are closing the loopholes that could undermine this vital ban. This is about fairness, safety, and ensuring that no more lives are needlessly cut short by preventable exposure to dangerous materials. I stand in full support of this bill, Deputy Speaker, and I commend it to the House. Thank you.
Thank you. Question is that this bill be now read a second time, and I call the member for Haslup.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Australian workers in every occupation everywhere are entitled to safe working conditions. They have a right to go to work and to return home safely to their families. The workplace should not be a hazardous place where our bodies or minds are attacked overtly or insidiously. Those attacks are rarely deliberate, though they sometimes happen. Usually they occur because somebody somewhere is unaware or careless of the fact that workers are human beings entitled to respect. Although they help produce profits of all kinds, they are not things to be used to make profits or assist somebody else's personal ambitions. Their contributions should be respected and their health and safety actively maintained. For their own sake, for family's sake, and for all our sakes, if we are to be decent human beings in a decent society. The Albanese Labor government is committed to protecting Australian workers from the harm associated with silicosis and silica-related diseases. Silica is a complex material and we can't live without it, but some silica dust is dangerous, even deadly. It's an insidious attack on human bodies. We now know that silica-laden dust produced when cutting engineered and natural stone for use in homes has been maiming and killing workers young and old. Almost 1 in 4 engineered stone workers has contracted silicosis. I'll say it again. Almost 1 in 4 engineered stone workers has contracted silicosis. It's a terrible figure and it can't be allowed to continue. When the Albanese Labor government came into office in 2022, we encountered the growing concern of anxious workers and frustrated scientists that something was seriously wrong. In July 2022, Dr. Renee Carey from the Curtin University School of Population Health in my home state of Western Australia reported on the results of a study commissioned by the ACTU. More than 500,000 Australian workers were being exposed to silica dust across various industries. Her colleague, John Curtin Distinguished Professor Lynn Fiske, told us that banning engineered stone would save lives. By the Fair Work Legislation Amendment, Closing Loopholes Act 2023, we added silicosis to the remit of the Asbestos Society and Eradication Agency. And on the 1st of July 2024, in one of those moments that make me proud to be an Australian, and especially proud to be a member of the Australian Labor Party, the Albanese Labor government joined with the states and territories to implement a world-first prohibition on the use, manufacture, supply, processing and installation of engineered stone benchtops, panels and slabs in Australia. World first. Why was Australia the first nation to act so decisively? In large part because of the collective wisdom and efforts of organised unions. The union movement, so relentlessly attacked by those opposite, have saved countless lives in the fight for safe working conditions. We don't always know straight away that something is wrong. It took decades to understand the dangers of asbestos, to heed the warnings of voices that so often sounded like fringe agitators. In fact, when I was in high school, I saw the first inklings that something was wrong beginning to take effect. But slowly, too slowly. It was proposed back in 1988 that there should be a class trip to the Pilbara, which would include visiting the asbestos mining town of Whitnall. Some parents at the meeting were concerned, but they were reassured. So a busload of us camped in the deserted town of Whitnall, where so many lives have been destroyed. It's now closed to all, unsafe for humans. Unions and labour lawyers are still fighting for justice and fair compensation for the victims of asbestos-related diseases. They have done this quite literally, with tears in their eyes. I know them and I commend and thank them. I thank too the Australian Workers' Union, the Construction, Forestry, Maritime Mining and Energy Union, the Electrical Trades Union, the Australian Manufacturing Workers' Union, the Transport Workers' Union, the United Workers' Union and state union bodies and the ACTU. I have previously told members opposite in this place that they need to engage with unions in a proactive and positive way. The Coalition has spent a lot of its energy trying to demonise unions. They need to remember that in every workplace there can be bad actors. Their own party has not been short of this. Yet we maintain the view that each of our political parties, just as each of our unions, can rise above the malfeasance of a few. It would be better for the Coalition to put aside its anti-union reflex and instead to learn directly, as we do, from those who represent working Australians at the coalface of each industry. Unions have been at the forefront of efforts to come to grips with this dangerous practice, to stop the needless deaths. It was the labour unions in Chile that helped identify silicosis in miners as early as 1930. That's almost 100 years ago. South Africa's National Union of Mine Workers supported legal cases in that country, and in the UK against companies mining asbestos more than 10 years ago. It was Unite, the UK and Ireland's largest union, that created an online register for silicosis sufferers in 2019. In Western Australia, I witnessed firsthand the campaign led and run by McEwen and the West WA branch of the CFMEU for the banning of engineered stone. They worked on this with enormous effort and diligence for more than a decade. Unions are solid repositories of practical experience that we should respect. They listen, they learn, they study, and they address real-world problems. It is foolish in the extreme for a political party to eschew that assistance and wisdom. Ignoring the evidence they uncover cannot lead to useful policy. I thank all the determined researchers, especially those from the University of Adelaide, where there has been almost a century of research into silicosis. The research continues. Lung disease is likely to be only the most obvious effect. At Monash University, researchers reported in September last year a finding that those workers exposed to silica dust show a higher incidence of blood markers that are the hallmark of autoimmune diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis and systematic lupus erythematosus. The problems of engineered stone and silicosis date back to ancient Egypt, but the popularity of engineered stone everywhere has now created an international crisis for many thousands of workers. We have learned from our terrible experience with asbestosis, but the plaintiffs now taking action against company in relation to engineered stone products are facing the same difficulties in seeking compensation. It can often be a race against time. Rather than seeing compensation cases and grieving families, we want to keep the people they love alive. On New Year's Day this year, we strengthened our prohibition with a further prohibition on the importation of engineered stone. That sends a message, not just to companies here, but to the world. The amendments in this bill, Customs Amendment, Expedited Seizure and Disposal of Engineered Stone, Bill 2024, will amend the Customs Act of 1901 so we can support the effective operation of the import prohibition by enhancing existing seizure and disposal powers under the Customs Act. Engineered stone products are bulky. They pose significant challenges in all sorts of ways. We can't afford to have them occupying large amounts of space. Under the Customs Act, items seized are generally required to be kept for 30 days prior to disposal. We need a mechanism by the Australian Border Force to deal with seized engineered stone efficiently by allowing for its immediate destruction. This is what we do with other prohibited imports like dangerous and perishable goods and illicit drugs. This bill will allow the Comptroller General of Customs to decide on the best way to deal with seized stone products, including choosing immediate destruction. Australian Border Force will also be supported by funding of $32.1 million over the next 2 years, provided in the 2024-25 budget. We understand that an importer might want to challenge this expedited destruction, so we are allowing for the right to recover the market value of the goods if they can establish that the circumstances required to trigger the destruction did not exist. The bill provides not only a way for customs to do their important work efficiently, but also adds another layer of deterrence. It is worth considering that while we have legislated here at home, the scourge of silicosis caused by engineered stone continues in many countries. Immediate destruction at point of entry will help send a message to importers and manufacturers overseas that Australia is serious about protecting workers. It will be another way in which we help to drive down demand and in so doing reduce harm. When I spoke on the National Disease Registry Bill last year, I mentioned the incidence of silicosis in workplaces in gold mines in Brazil, in Budpura in India, known as the City of Widows, and among Latino sandstone workers in Los Angeles. It is estimated that about 230 million workers globally are exposed to silica dust in their workplaces. Study after study tolls the bells on the dangers, but the website of engineered stone companies portray their products as safe and sustainable. The other positive effect of our laws, of course, is that other jurisdictions will follow our lead. In August last year, European researchers urged the UK and the EU to follow Australia's lead and ban engineered stone. UK doctors working in the field added their voice to the call. In December, the New Zealand Minister for Workplace Relations and Safety opened consultations on the question of a ban. The manufacture and export and use of asbestos went through a similar process, with most jurisdictions coming to the same conclusion eventually. In the holdout countries such as Russia, the use of asbestos carries with it ongoing health consequences. The Albanese Labor government does not believe in ignoring problems, hiding from them or running away from them. This is not what the Australian people pay the government to do. They pay them to listen to them, all of them, identify the problems, do the necessary consultation and research, and get to work to fix them. This is what we do. Whatever the problems are, an economy with over 6% inflation, inactivity on housing construction, a neglected and ailing healthcare system or inadequate childcare, workers' safety care. Dealing with this challenge in relation to engineered stone products is congruent with the government's attitude to both the health of Australians and the rights of Australian workers. I commend the bill to the House.
The question is that this bill be now read a second time, and I call the member for Hawke.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Every Australian worker has the right to go to work and return home safe. Yet for years, Australian workers were unknowingly exposed to enormous risks, cutting and grinding engineered stone that contained deadly crystalline silica. Silicosis has devastated families across the nation, in communities like Melton, Sunbury and Bacchus Marsh in my electorate of Hawke. It's an incurable disease that has caused immense suffering for Australians and their families. Workers who can no longer play with their children because of breathlessness, and families who've lost loved ones far too soon. Young tradespeople whose careers have been stolen by an invisible killer. This is the human cost of silicosis, and it is truly devastating. That's why the Albanese Labor government is taking decisive action. On July 1st, 2024, we introduced a world-first prohibition on the use, manufacture, supply, processing and installation of engineered stone benchtops, panels and slabs in Australia. On January 1st, 2025, we strengthened this prohibition by extending it to the importation of engineered stone too. Deputy Speaker, the Albanese Labor government is committed to improving the conditions of Australian workers, and the most fundamental workplace right is safety. That's why we have taken a comprehensive approach to protecting workers from this deadly disease. We established the National Occupational Respiratory Disease Registry to track cases and ensure affected workers receive the necessary support. Additionally, Safe Work Australia has been tasked with updating workplace exposure standards and providing guidance on silica risk management. Deputy Speaker, this bill is about building on the important work the Albanese Labor government has already done and ensures that our ban on engineered stone is enforceable, particularly at our borders. The Australian Border Force has been given clear directives to intercept and to prevent the importation of engineered stone, reinforcing our commitment to worker safety. This bill amends the Customs Act 1901 to streamline the seizure and disposal of imported engineered stone. Without this legislation, the ABF would face significant logistical challenges in handling seized goods. Engineered stone is a bulk material, and storage, transportation and disposal require extensive resources. The amendments in this bill provide a clear mechanism for the immediate destruction of prohibited engineered stone following seizure. This ensures that our customs enforcement remains effective and that resources are not diverted from other critical border security operations. Without this amendment, the ABF would be left to manage vast quantities of seized engineered stone, straining its capacity and diverting resources from other priorities. Under existing arrangements, seized goods must be stored while legal proceedings determine their final disposal. This process is cumbersome and impractical when dealing with bulk materials. This bill resolves that issue by allowing for immediate destruction, similar to existing provisions for other prohibited imports, such as illicit drugs, tobacco and dangerous goods. Expedited disposal will free up enforcement resources, allowing the ABF to focus on deterring illegal imports rather than managing stockpiles of seized material. Deputy Speaker, this legislation would not have been possible without the unwavering commitment of Australia's trade unions. For years, unions have led the charge in demanding stronger protections, raising awareness of the deadly risks of silica exposure, and providing crucial support to affected workers and their families. Their relentless advocacy ensured that silicosis was recognised as an urgent public health crisis requiring decisive government intervention. Silicosis is unique among occupational diseases. Unlike many other workplace hazards, its cause is clear and singular: exposure to silica dust. This means every single case of silicosis is entirely preventable. In fact, 100% of silicosis cases are caused by occupational exposure, 100%, with research from Curtin University in 2022 estimating that up to 100,000 cases of silicosis could emerge from existing workplace exposure. Without strong intervention, hundreds of thousands more workers would continue to be put at risk. The ACTU, along with individual unions representing stonemasons, construction workers and manufacturing employees, played an instrumental role in achieving this ban. Their tireless campaigning and dedication to worker safety have directly shaped the policy decisions that bring us to this very moment. This bill is proof of what can be accomplished when unions, workers and government come together for a common cause. When Labor's in government, workers' voices are heard and their safety is prioritised. The passage of this legislation reaffirms our commitment to protecting workers and ensuring that no one is forced to sacrifice their health for their job. Deputy Speaker, this is a vital piece of legislation. It ensures that our world-leading ban on engineered stone is enforceable and effective, and seeks to prevent any more Australian workers and their families suffering the consequences of this devastating disease. I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that this bill be now read a second time, and I call the member for Macon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'll make a short contribution to this legislation because I believe it's very important legislation. For the past 2 decades, every year in November, the Asbestos Victims Association of Salisbury holds a remembrance service at Pitman Park in Salisbury in recognition of the people who have died from asbestos-related illnesses over the years. And each year, white crosses are placed on the lawn area where the service is held with the names of those people who have died. And each year, the number of crosses continues to increase. For all the deaths to date that we know of, sadly, there are many more to come because asbestos diseases often take years to take effect. I've personally watched people who were affected by an asbestos disease in their last months and their struggle to survive and the strain and the heartache it places not only on them but on their family members who are caring for them. It is truly devastating. Disturbingly and incomprehensibly, asbestos is still legally used in some countries throughout the world, even though the statistics and the evidence is now as clear as it can ever be. Just as sinister is the reality that the deadly nature of asbestos was known over a century ago, and yet its use was allowed to continue for the best part of last century, and in particular in the post-World War II years, where it was used in just about every home throughout Australia and in so many other different applications. Human lives and the devastated families left were sacrificed for money and for profit. There has, however, been some lessons learned from society's use of asbestos. In particular, a much better understanding of dust-related diseases, including the risk products, the health effects, and the treatment options that are now available. Of course, prevention is always better than cure. So when the evidence was clear that engineered stone presented a serious health risk to workers within the industry, we needed to act. I'm proud to be a member of a parliament that was not going to wait another 100 years, as we did with asbestos, and was a parliament that introduced a ban on the use, manufacture and supply of engineered stone on the 1st of July 2024. We were, I believe, the first country to do so. And that ban took effect when new national work, health and safety laws came into effect across the country, because it had to be done in conjunction with each of the states. That ban was strengthened with the ban including a ban on all imported finished engineered stone products coming into effect only on the 1st of January this year. Engineered stone is quartz or agglomerate stone that is crushed and then bound with a resin. The dust from engineered stone, when it is drilled, polished or cut, is deadly. Other colleagues have quoted estimates of the numbers of workers that have already been affected by silicon dust, or silicosis as it is often referred to with respect to some of the illnesses. But the truth is, in my view, that we won't really know what the true effect of silicosis or engineered stone effects on people's health has been until some more years have passed, as we learnt with the case with asbestos. Whatever the statistics are, and I commend my colleagues who have quoted some of those statistics, which are based on sound research, the reality is that hundreds, if not thousands of people will die because of the use of this product. Now, we've banned it in Australia, and I believe that that's an important first step. I would like to think that other countries might do the same, because quite frankly, my care is not only for the people in this country when it comes to a known product that is deadly, but for all people that are forced to work with us. Which brings me to this legislation. Put simply, anyone importing engineered stone products must have a valid permit or an exemption. Without a valid permit or an exemption, any engineered stone that is detected will be seized and disposed of by our customs departments. The seizure and holding costs and disposal of those products then comes at a significant cost to government, which is why an expedited disposal process is in the public interest, and hence the need for this legislation. And I note that some $32 million over the next 2 years have been added in additional funding for the Department of Home Affairs to cover the costs associated with the seizure, storage and disposal of any seized product. And, just how much it will cost, I don't know. What I also don't know is whether any of those costs will be able to be recovered, and I hope that we might be able to do so. But as we know from past experiences, the reality is that recovering costs isn't always possible, and so we need to act. And nor should we delay the process of disposal of the product whilst we look at whether we can recover the cost. To me, the fact is the product needs to be disposed of. Doing it quickly saves costs in any event, so let's get on with it and do it. And that's exactly what this legislation does, and it makes it clear that this government and we in Australia will simply not accept the continued use of this product. And can I finish by making this observation? I recently spoke to someone who works with engineered stone. And the person said, provided you work with it safely and abide to all of the preconditions, it is really a product that you can continue to use. Now, I accept that if you work with it safely, that might be the case. But the reality is that once it's in use and out there in the community, there will be times when people will have to deal with it that don't know that they have to work with it safely, don't know how to work with it safely, whether they're doing repairs or the like, and it still presents a risk to ongoing people in the future. And therefore, I support the ban. I also note that there are good alternatives to engineered stone, whether it's marble, natural stone, porcelain, terrazzo, or even steel and timber products that now can actually be used as an alternative. So there is no need to use a product that is deadly. We need to get our message out there loud and clear, and that's exactly what this legislation does.
The question is that this bill be now read a second time, and I call the Minister.
Thanks, Speaker. I want to thank all of the members who've contributed to this debate regarding this pretty important reform. Silicosis is an insidious disease, and people who contract it, unfortunately, have their lung capacity reduced over time and die a very long, slow death. So we know that engineered stone products, when handled in the wrong way, can result in people working with them contracting silicosis and other diseases. So that's why the government's taking this action to strengthen the legislative framework for engineered stone in order to protect workers from the health risks associated with it. We're determined to put in place mechanisms to prevent workers from being exposed to respirable crystalline silica, which, when inhaled, can cause fatal lung disease and other chronic illnesses like silicosis. A key element of achieving this is inclusion of engineered stone as a prohibited import under customs regulations, and the prohibited imports regulations came into effect on the 1st of January 2025. The measures in this bill will support the import prohibition, providing for the expedited seizure and disposal of engineered stone products seized at the border and enhancing the operational effectiveness of the import prohibition. The management of seized engineered stone products at the border presents significant logistical challenges for Border Force, particularly in terms of storage and transport of this bulk good. So the measures in this bill are essential to provide a mechanism to allow Australian Border Force officials to effectively administer seized engineered stone products at the border. So, Speaker, with the passage of this bill, I'm pleased to say that Australian workers and their families will be a step closer to being protected from significant harms caused by working with engineered stone, and I commend the bill.
I call the member for Solomon.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. I move the debate now be adjourned and the resumption of the debate be made in order for the day for a later hour this day.
The question is that the debate be adjourned and the resumption of the debate be made in order of the day for a later hour this day. All of those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. I call the clerk.
Government business, order of the day number 2, resumption of debate on the condolence motion in relation to the death of the Honourable Kevin James Andrews AM.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Jagga Jagga.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Kevin Andrews was a member for Menzies between 1991 to 2022. And in addition to that long service to that community, he was well known and respected in my electorate, which neighbours Menzies, for both his service to the nation and for his role as a devoted parishioner of St John's in Heidelberg. I do believe that word service sums up Kevin's approach to public life. It was clear that he approached his many roles as a respected local MP, a minister and as a parishioner with humbleness and devotion. After I was elected to the neighbouring seat of Jagga Jagga in 2019, I always appreciated the courtesy and thoughtfulness Kevin brought to our interactions, both in the Parliament and in the community. We would meet each other in the corridors in this place, where he also held the role of Father of the House, and we would meet each other back home in places like pre-poll, where even within the heightened emotional environment of a campaign, Kevin continued to steadfastly and politely interact with the community and with me. And in that, I think that he did set an important example in this place, that even when your political views do not align, and there are many of my values that did not align with Kevin's, dignity and respect for others should always win out. I am very aware that, as with so many who choose to serve in public life, the contributions that Kevin made over decades could not have happened without the support of his family, and in particular his wife Margie, who was so often by his side. It was clear that theirs was a very special relationship, and I once again extend my condolences to Margie, to their children, and to all who are missing Kevin. Vale Kevin Andrews.
Question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the member for Solomon.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to contribute to the condolence motion on the Honourable Kevin James Andrews AM. It is important that we stop and recognise that both as a former member of this House for the division of Menzies over a long period of time and as a former minister, that we place on the record our appreciation as federal representatives for his long and meritorious public service to our nation, and also tender our sympathies and condolences to Kevin's family in their bereavement. As the Prime Minister said yesterday, and I quote, "It is a measure of the man that we honour today that throughout the wealth of tributes paid to his life by his colleagues, his opponents, his loved ones and his friends, the same three pillars stand tall in all of them: his deep faith, his belief in public service and his devotion to his family," end quote. And to that I would add his devotion to family, as in the concept of family and the importance of family, and I'll touch on that a little bit. But I think the Prime Minister's words touch on his deep faith that I share as a practising Catholic, but also his belief in public service as being of a very important good. And certainly I see my own service in the military and continuing into this place as just a continuance of public service to the nation. I was always impressed by that with Kevin. As the PM also said, we all see issues from different perspectives, and we don't always agree, but it's the way in which we conduct ourselves and the way in which Kevin conducted himself that was noteworthy. I certainly didn't agree with some of the things some of the principles that Kevin held, but I did agree with a lot of others that he did. For instance, he and I shared a common belief in the primacy of palliative care, in the importance of making sure palliative care is available to people that need it during end of life. There were principles of his that I disagreed with, and it is true that he made a mark on the Northern Territory through his principles being applied in the overturning of NT legislation. And I don't offer this as part of the condolence in any way as a criticism, but he was following his beliefs in the 1996 Euthanasia Laws Bill, known later as the Andrews Bill. The Leader of the Opposition commented yesterday on how infrequent it is to have a private member's bill succeed, and that Kevin Andrews managed to do that. From my perspective, although I held different thoughts on that issue and successfully brought a private member's bill to extinguish the Andrews Bill, I appreciated that he always respected the fact that I was doing that out of a different principle, and that being to protect the democratic rights of Territorians. But I did appreciate that he was always open to have those discussions. but it does reflect the conviction that he brought to public life, and I hope that conviction is always here and present in this place. All those issues over a long period of time, and including working as the Defence Minister, I mean, truly honourable and important roles that he was able to navigate, and they are difficult roles. But I was also really impressed when I turned up to a polypedal as someone who was quite a bit younger than him, and because I thought it was important that our side of politics was present, and the member for Hume was also there, and I remember distinctly being impressed about Kevin's fitness for an older fellow, indeed the father of the house, as many people have commented on, but also his resilience. Some people might remember that he had a fall on during the polypedal in that year, 2017, and we were absolutely flogging it down this hill, very tight up behind each other. We were going fast. And Kevin had hit some gravel and fallen from his bike, and he actually broke his collarbone in that fall. But I was 2 bikes back, and I distinctly remember having the opportunity, I'm going to run over this bloke. I couldn't see who it was on the ground, but there was some divine intervention, and instead I decided to take a fall to the left-hand side into the bush, which I would have done for anyone, but I was pleased when I got up, and he was already getting to his feet. Like, he would have been in a little bit of shock, but a lot of pain. And he said to me later, "Yep, yeah, I'm going to have to pull out." And I said, "Yeah, mate, no worries. You've broken your collarbone in a big fall." But the fact that in his advanced years he was out there, he was raising money for Soldier On, he was mixing it with, the member for Hume and others, or Tony Abbott being another, who were, a lot fitter than some of the rest of us, but he was mixing it, and that was impressive. His depth of faith, and I look forward to reading his memoirs, was something, as a person of faith, that was also impressive to me. I've mentioned some of the things I think that he can be proud of in relation to his being a Minister for Defence, and trying to do his best, I think, according to his beliefs and his principles. I too see this job and politics as a vocation, and I've been lucky to be a member of this place with people of the calibre of Kevin Andrews, and to have experiences like being on the polypedal with him. Just finally, his focus on the family. I haven't read his 2012 book, maybe I do, but in defending marriage and the family as being so much of an important part of society's building blocks, that is part of my commitment too in this place and as a leader in public discourse. The family is so important. We need to, in every way we can, support Australian families. And I think Kevin can, or I'm sure he's up there very happy that there are people in this place that will continue to support Australian families and the institution of marriage, as important as it is. And in saying that, can I pass from my family, from my wife and children, our condolences to Kevin's wife, Margie, and to their children, Emily, James, Stuart, Catherine and Benjamin. Kevin Andrews, rest in peace and God bless you.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Deakin.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. It's
Today's condolence is not one up until Kevin's untimely death, was one that I thought I would ever be giving in this place to my very close friend, confidant and ally in Kevin Andrews. Kevin, as others have indicated, lived an extraordinarily consequential life. And in the Parliament House, we often judge people's impact on the titles they've held, the duration that they've been here, as quick markers of how consequential somebody has been. I think with Kevin, even though he did leave Parliament as the father of the House, he was the member for Menzies for over 30 years. He was a minister in the Howard and Abbott governments, played a huge role, even from the backbench, initially in the Howard government, and at the end of his parliamentary career, he would tick the boxes of being a huge figure, not just for the Liberal Party, but a huge political figure in this country by any of those metrics. But they're not the reasons why he was a huge figure. Kevin was a giant of Australian politics because I think for many of us, his approach, his values were a reflection of Australia at its best and a reflection of a time when, as others have said, politics wasn't a blood sport. Politics wasn't about playing the man, it was about playing the ball. Politics was about, was a vocation, not a career. It was a vocation, not a career pathway. So I think for many of us in the Parliament, Kevin embodied those best instincts of what many of us imagine a parliamentarian to be. Kevin took on difficult fights. Kevin stood up for important causes. From my perspective, he stood up for causes in which I wholeheartedly agreed with. Kevin's fundamental view that strong nations, strong states, strong communities are built on the foundation of strong and healthy families, I think is the most significant touchstone of his political ethos, and one in which I entirely agreed with. His defence of life at times when it was unpopular, at times when it was difficult, but his abiding view on the sanctity of life, I think, is a thread throughout his career. I remember being a humble branch member in his electorate in my, must have been probably early 20s, handing out how to vote cards and in the thick of the debate around euthanasia. And whilst those of us who were supporting Kevin couldn't have been prouder of him, I witnessed firsthand the ferocious attacks that he faced, the targeted and coordinated attacks that he faced at that time when he was standing up for the primacy and the importance of palliative care and the sanctity of human life. That was a fight that not many backbenchers would take on, but was a fight that Kevin took on with relish and succeeded. May not have succeeded for all time, but he succeeded at that time and in that moment. Kevin obviously took that vein of thinking throughout his political career. As I said, being a minister in two governments is quite an extraordinary thing and is a testament to his capacity, not just his values. I think a lot of us instinctively reflect on Kevin's values, the fact he was tethered to firm values, the fact that I think one of the dirtiest words in politics today, pragmatism, which often is shortcut for selling out your values for what is politically expedient at the time. Kevin took on those difficult fights, even at personal cost to himself, even when the zeitgeist was against him. But even though we focus on his values, I think it's also important to focus on his ability, his capacity. And in every portfolio he had, I suspect, without knowing firsthand, I suspect they were given to him because there were difficult challenges in those portfolios, and Kevin, as a steady hand and a safe pair of hands, was given those difficult portfolios at difficult times because of his capacity. And whether it's his time in defence, whether it's his time in industrial relations, whether it's his time in social services or in aged care, no one can suggest that Kevin was given an armchair ride in the portfolios that he was offered by Prime Ministers Howard and Abbott. And for him to take those on, and in most cases, not only succeed substantively, which is the most important thing, but also often succeed politically, I think is testament to his capacity for good policy, his hard work, but also his capacity in the political sphere, which in the end he was a part of. I, as I alluded to at the beginning, was very close to Kevin as a confidant, as a very close ally. He supported me when I was a candidate in the pre-selection for Deakin back in 2012, and our very close mutual friend, the late Sandra Mercer-Moore, who was one of the trio that many would refer to. It is a very sobering moment when I think back to two of my closest allies and confidants, both now having passed, but I do know that Kevin and Sandra will be catching up on all things politics in a better place now. And the one thing I think that is of some comfort to Margie and Kevin's wonderful family is the legacy that Kevin leaves behind. And importantly, Kevin lived what he preached. Everyone in this chamber, and I'm as guilty of this as many, they say one thing publicly and sometimes do a little bit differently themselves privately or when there aren't cameras on. Kevin was a remarkable man in that what he preached, he practiced. Kevin, as a staunch advocate of marriage and the importance of marriage as an institution, the foundational institution to support strong families, which in turn support strong communities and strong states and strong nations, he lived that with Margie, his wonderful wife, who was by his side throughout his political career and before and after. Kevin, I think, is the greatest mark of success during his time in Parliament, raised a wonderful family and had a marriage that was as strong at the end of his political career as it was at the beginning. I think that is the greatest mark of success that any of us can hope for. And Kevin practiced what he preached. It's also been remarked just how courteous Kevin always was. Kevin was under attack a lot. Being a Conservative Liberal is not particularly popular with large swathes of the media or our political opponents. But Kevin, I think, had something I wish I had a bit more of. Kevin had this unflappable ability to just remain courteous with everybody, no matter what the attacks were. And I think that speaks to a character trait again, that I think we could all aspire to have a bit more of, but I think has come through in the condolence motions over the last few days. So, an extraordinarily consequential life, a giant of Australian politics, a giant of the Liberal Party, a giant of the Victorian Liberal Party, who didn't necessarily treat him with the respect he should have been treated at all times. But Kevin never spat the dummy. He was a Liberal through and through, and he remained true to our values and our cause, even at times of disappointment, which again speaks, I think, to his character. So to Margie and their wonderful family, I just say, at this extraordinarily difficult time, I hope you are drawing comfort from the fact that Kevin was an extraordinary man with an extraordinary legacy, and most importantly, helped countless people throughout Australia and in his local community, which I think is probably the greatest legacy that anyone can leave behind. May he rest in peace.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Hume.
Well, thank you, Deputy Speaker, and it's a great honour to be able to speak about my friend and mentor, Kevin Andrews. This condolence motion to him is, I think, incredibly important because he served this country in a way that so few have been able to, and for so long as Father of the House, and someone for whom I had enormous respect, both in his time here and beyond. Much has been said already about his background. Of course, I think one of the really important parts of that background is he grew up as a country boy, born in Sale. His family ran a small business, a trucking business, and I think many of his values you can see that he lived by came from that background, a background that I think breeds some of the greatest Australians, but I wouldn't say that. But I think it tells you something of his old world values in many ways and where they came from. He won his seat of Menzies in 1991. I mean, it seems like a long time ago, 1991, but he was here a very long time. He won it in a by-election, and he served the people of Menzies with enormous distinction over almost 3 decades. And for that, we should all be enormously grateful. Of course, as he would have said, the most important part of his life was his family, and many have made that point. Married to Margie, an extraordinary marriage. She was the head of his Praetorian Guard. And anyone who knows Margie will know exactly what I mean by that. She is a formidable and wonderful, wonderful woman. Their partnership was an extraordinary one because I think, as the Leader of the Opposition pointed out yesterday, the complementarity between the two of them was great. And perhaps sometimes similar people attract, sometimes it's those who are more complementary, and certainly that's the case between Kevin and Margie. But that was an incredible partnership, their life together. I saw it time and time again when I saw both of them. I saw them most when it came to cycling. I'll talk about that in a moment. But it was a role model. Their partnership is a role model to so many of us, I think, because it showed you how two very different people could complement each other, support each other. I mean, the support they gave to each other and what they sought to do in their lives was amazing. And I think even though some might say that their marriage was one steeped in old world values, I think they're values that are the hallmark of a great partnership, because that's what their marriage clearly was, with their children, Emily, James, Stuart, Catherine and Benjamin. And of course, he was a man of great faith, devoted to God as well. And I'll come back to that in a moment. But one of his great passions in life was cycling. And I learned over time how passionate he was about cycling, because I spent a lot of time sitting on a bike right next to him. And one of the wonderful things about sitting on a bike each year for 8 days, over 1,000 kilometres, is you get to talk to people and get to know them in a way that you might otherwise never get to know those people, because you've got a lot of time. You've got a lot of time, and if you talk, some of the pain goes away. And I had a lot of time to talk to Kevin, and a lot of time for Kevin when I talked to him. as we sat on the bike together, both on polypedal each year for many, many years, starting in 2013, I think it was. And in Canberra here on Wednesday mornings, a group of us go out, and Kevin would come along to that as well. And the conversations would often meander to all sorts of weird and wonderful places, but they would, with Kevin, always come back to the basics of why we are doing what we're doing, the basics of what is important in our lives, the relationships we have, the people and values we stand for. And with Kevin, it was so consistent and coherent every single time. He became, over time, a truly great role model and mentor for me, not by instructing me what to do, but by demonstrating how to live. And I think that kind of role modelling is the most powerful of all. It's a role modelling he would never have fully realised he was giving, a mentoring that some of the best mentors in life don't even realise they're your mentors. And Kevin was one of those for me. He was absolutely one of those. Now, his passion for cycling also combined with his passion for writing. And one of his really, truly remarkable books, and he wrote a number of books, but one of his remarkable books that I think has not been given enough attention is his book about cycling and the history of Italy. Now, you might all think, well, that's kind of a weird thing to write a book about. And initially I thought that's right, until I looked at what he had written about. And he had written what I think is a really masterful contribution about the history of Italy, how Italy as a state, as a government, as a country was formed, the rivalries in that formation, and how cycling had a parallel to that. The great rivalries in cycling in Italy were parallel to the great rivalries in politics in the formation of Italy. And of course, anyone who knows something of the history of Italy will know it was a cathartic formation that took centuries. And just as there were great rivalries throughout that formation of Italy, there were great rivalries in the story of the great cyclists of Italy, which we continue to see today, by the way. I mean, it continues to be one of the great cycling countries of the world. But this was vintage Kevin Andrews, combining his passion for history, his passion for writing, his passion for cycling in a book that I think was a really novel contribution and emblematic of the way Kevin Andrews looked at the world and the way he contributed to the world. Our time on Polypedal together over all those years was really wonderful, and the member for Solomon made a nice contribution about... I didn't realise he was there at the time when Kevin broke his collarbone in 2017. 2017, he'd just been Defence Minister, and we visited many of the defence barracks along the route that year from Albury through to Manly, including Holsworthy Barracks, and I think that was the last one we visited before we went up to Manly, but we were leaving Holsworthy Barracks down Heathcote Road, and Kevin took a tumble. But you wouldn't have known. This guy had a capacity to manage pain like few I have ever seen. And it's vintage Kevin. His demeanour never changed. It was always calm. It was always gathered. It was always coherent, even when he was in extraordinary pain. He did occasionally inflict pain on Polypedal, I have to say, and Peter, the Leader of the Opposition yesterday in the House, did make reference to what happens on Polypedal stays on Polypedal, and that is largely true. But Kevin's contributions on karaoke nights at Polypedal, which was one night each year, where the karaoke machine comes out, were not always his best contributions, I have to say, because he and Tony Abbott would combine each year to give a rendition of Suspicious Minds that is best forgotten, because they couldn't hit the note on any of the notes. But they would do it each year, and each time they would hold themselves out as the greatest singers of Suspicious Minds since Elvis himself. But that wasn't Kevin's best, but it was something we will always remember, and those of us who have heard it will always cherish it as a wonderful example of the authenticity of Kevin Andrews. Can I say, Deputy Speaker, that his role modelling for me personally extended into many different areas. One was his civility, and we've just heard the member for Deakin and the member for Solomon talk about the wonderful civility of Kevin Andrews. Much of that, I think, came from his upbringing, but also his faith. And his deep faith was something that I have great respect for. Each of us who are people of faith in this place live that in different ways. The most important way that Kevin lived it is by living those values in the Parliament every single day. Every single day, in every moment. He just wouldn't depart from them. And that is difficult because, as the member for Deakin just told us, this place can be faddish. This place can be we can be slaves to fashion, to whatever is the latest piece of thinking. And that was never Kevin. Kevin would always go back to those bedrock principles and values that he grew up with, that he believed in. That expression of faith, I think, is something that I have enormous respect for. I can only hope to be even close to that level of coherence of Kevin each day. But we saw it, all of us in the party room, we saw it in our informal interactions, and we saw it in the Parliament as well. I've talked about family and his belief in family, but he wrote about this and he spoke about it often. And of course, that relationship with Margie and with his kids was right at the heart of that. But I think the important point here is he did something which is difficult in this place. Often here in the Parliament of our great nation, it is easy to believe that the answer to all problems is just a better government policy. And government policy is important, don't get me wrong. But Kevin always understood that ultimately human fulfilment and happiness comes from the relationships we have with those people close to us. That is the bedrock. That is the most important thing of all. And to the extent that policy can have a role in making sure that we enable people to have a great family life, then that's important. That is fundamentally important. And I think Kevin's commitment to those values is something we should all revere. He also had great commitment to our flag. Alongside faith and family, he believed in this nation like few others. He was an incredible servant in his many roles, including his ministerial roles. I saw him particularly proud of his time as Defence Minister. I think he thoroughly enjoyed the role he played as Defence Minister because he saw it as one of those bedrock services and roles that the government can play that is so important to our security and our future as a country. Deputy Speaker, it has been a true honour for me to be a colleague and a friend, and certainly to be mentored by a man as wonderful as Kevin Andrews. Can I thank or can I wish my very best to Margie, to the family, to the kids, Emily, James, Stuart, Catherine and Benjamin. May Kevin Andrews rest in peace.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Sturt.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and indeed in paying tribute to Kevin Andrews, first acknowledge and associate myself with the remarks made by the contributions so far of other members. And it's particularly difficult when we have these condolence motions to speak on them when they involve someone that you actually served with in this Parliament, and it was my honour to serve with Kevin in the 47th Parliament, his last term in this building, my first term in this building, and being able to observe him, his great understandings of this building, of being a parliamentarian, all members, I think, even the Prime Minister, have referenced him in a position of mentorship to everyone that served with him. And that was the case for me, as it was for all members that have commented on this debate so far. I describe Kevin as a parliamentarian, knowing full well that he had a very distinguished contribution to the executive of this nation as well, of course serving as a minister in both the Howard and Abbott governments to great distinction. But in our Westminster system, which is quite different to many others around the world, obviously our executive comes out of our legislature. You can't serve in the executive government if you're not a member of Parliament, but it does sometimes diminish the importance of reflecting on the role of a legislator and parliamentarian. And in the case of Kevin, even though it's quite warranted to talk about his service as a minister, I would like to focus on the great legacy he leaves as a parliamentarian and as having served in this place, in the House of Representatives, for more than 30 years, of course, as the father of the House in the last few years of his career here, and that is extremely significant. The 30-year club is a very small and exclusive one. We have one member of the current Parliament, the member for Kennedy, who is in that club, and there are times when not a single member of the House of Representatives has met the 30-year milestone, which says all we need to know about how significant it is that Kevin served for more than 30 years. But time served is not in and of itself the metric, it's contribution made. And I refer to Kevin as a parliamentarian because I think it's regrettable that we in some ways use the term politician a little too often. And yes, I concede we are politicians and we engage in politics. But when you're elected to this building, you become a parliamentarian. And it is a worthy career and one to be proud of. And for too long, the things that are focused on and reflected on and dwelled on about parliamentarians are usually the negative sides of the process of what happens here. But fundamentally what we do here is a very good, important thing. We're a democracy, we represent our communities, we draft, debate, amend and pass legislation that the entire population of this nation becomes subject to. It's a very serious responsibility. And Kevin, when I think about his service, he was first and foremost a person that embodied a career that should be looked upon with pride of service in this place as a parliamentarian. And he experienced a lot. There's been a lot of commentary about some of the brave causes that he took up as a legislature, bringing private members' bills that succeeded through the Parliament, are things that will always be associated with Kevin's service here. Other members have reflected on the great challenges that you can face when you stick your head above the parapet, when you take on a cause or an issue that has different views in your own community, let alone across the entirety of the Australian community. And the bravery of Kevin and the principles of Kevin and the values that he held were what were his guiding fundamentals for the long period of time that he served in this Parliament. I'm probably breaking important party room conventions by talking about Kevin's last meeting that he attended in the party room, where he made the point that he was going to try and write a book on our party room, and particularly try and sort of encapsulate the great mysteries of how the Liberal party room operates, and maybe make it a little easier for some of us into the future to understand just exactly how we do what we do. And I'm not sure how far along Kevin got on that project, and when the time is appropriate, I'll be very interested to understand how far along he was in that, because I think that would have been a very interesting and helpful project for those of us that are in the current party room to understand more about the history of some of the decisions that are made and some of the ways in which we operate, And from Kevin's point of view, that body of work would have been very much about how to make sure that the lessons of the past inform a greater quality for our party room into the future, which was exactly the same approach he had to service in our chamber, to the service of the people, his electorate of Menzies, and his service to the people of Australia. I thank Kevin as the Defence Minister for the decision he made to commit to the surface fleet vessel construction in Adelaide. With a very different hat on, I was at a press conference that was held out at the Osborne Naval Shipbuilding Yard in 2015. Kevin was the Defence Minister. The Parliament was sitting, but it was very important. There was a degree of ambiguity around whether or not those vessels would be made in Australia. And Kevin flew to Adelaide that morning from Canberra and made sure he was back in time for the Parliament sitting to make a very clear announcement of commitment to the people of South Australia around that project and those future jobs. Now, that is one of many significant legacies he leaves behind as a minister. He also leaves behind a remarkable legacy as a legislator. Most importantly, we've heard about from so many people that know Kevin well, the legacy he leaves behind as a husband and a father. And I think if Kevin were able to choose which he would most prefer to have as his legacy, husband and father would be on question B at the top of his list. So to his wife, Margie, and to his family, it is an incredible loss to them. Having Margie in the chamber was very poignant and touching for the condolence motions movement yesterday. Our hearts are with them. We're very grateful to the service of Kevin to our nation, to this Parliament, to his community and to his family. Vale, Kevin Andrews.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call a member for Wright.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I was first elected to this Parliament in 2010. On average, as members of this Parliament, we would stand twice a week where we offer a minute's silence in question time for members of this place that had passed. And for over a decade, this ritual has continued, an honourable ritual. And it just speaks of the fragility when the movement shifts from people who you don't really know who they were to now you know who they are. The men and women that you have served with, where you're standing to offer a minute's silence, speaks of the fragility of life and the inevitability. When the news of Kevin Andrews' passing found me, I was shocked. At the age of 69, that is below the average life expectancy for an Australian male. Kevin, in his last contributions in the party room, as the member for Sturt aptly pointed to, showed no signs of illness, no signs of frailness. He was fit and well, with a plan and a destiny to invest time with his family. He had plans to write yet another book, which has been spoken about in a number of speeches. And so, a life lost too early. A life lost too early. And, Mr Speaker, in my contributions today, it is not my intention to speak of the biography of what Kevin Andrews was in his assorted ministries as such, because my colleagues have done that so appropriately, and I don't want to cover that ground. I want to speak more to the man and the contributions and the effects that he had on me. And I just think that Kevin Andrews walked the walk and talked the talk. He was a decent human being, and I cannot recall a particular point in the 15 years that I've served here where I sat with him where he said an unkind word about anyone. He used to get frustrated with some colleagues, and I think that's just a byproduct of working in a place where robust debates happened and points of difference, because he was such a conservative. And you know, our political ideologies were very much aligned, and so we found comfort in each other's similarities of our beliefs, and not always 100% aligned, but for the most, we were very much aligned. His Christian values, his commitment to family, and they go in hand. You can be a great father without being a Christian. When you're both, there is another set of values that you live by, and he was someone that I found very easy to look up to. And when I had a particular issue that was vexing me, I pondered for some time as to who I would take advice from, because the issue was sensitive. And I went to Kevin, and we spoke, and he gave me advice that reaffirmed what my problem was. And I left that meeting without divulging what it was, with a sense of calmness and a sense of healing. And most of all, through the Christian learnings, a sense of forgiveness. The bitterness that I had gone there with was gone. And it is a powerful skill that one has to be able to impart that generosity. But the point of the contribution that I wanted to make today, Mr. Speaker, is that Kevin's contribution to this country was cut short too early. And I just want to challenge members of the House that if Kevin Andrews was here listening to these contributions about him, what would his reaction be? What would he be saying? He'd be embarrassed of the generous comments that were made. He'd be humbled. But most of all, I think he would feel a sorrow for his family of not being able to wake up the next day with Margaret or take a phone call from one of the children. And those months and years ahead, having lost a father myself at a very young age, the pain never leaves you, but it does subside. Those that leave us are always in our presence, and I think Kevin will always be in our presence here as a political mentor. So what gift has he left us as politicians? And I think, passing away at the age of 69, you could argue that the gift he has given us is live every life as if there is no tomorrow. Leave nothing in the tank. Stay true to your values. Stay true to your family values. Stay true to your beliefs. Live them, share them, embrace them, and encourage others to do the same thing. Be forgiving. Be charitable. And when it comes to your children, the greatest gift you can give them is your time. And I know this task takes away an enormous amount of time as politicians that we would spend with our children. And I offer my condolences to Margaret and the children who now go through life having the memories of a wonderful father, but without being able to touch or hold their hand or pick that phone up again. And Kevin Andrews' gift to us is be good to your family. Live your life by the principles that he taught us. And in passing, my final comment is that someone will write the book that Kevin Andrews was going to write. With my conversations with him, he kept, with granular detail, party room meetings. And I thought, are you leaking to the press? Are you doing this for vexatious reasons or clandestine reasons? And he said, you should keep a diary. He said, you'll be surprised when you go back a couple of years after being here, how much slips your mind. He said, when you keep a diary, he said, my intention is to write a book. He said, we won't divulge names or anything, but more about to help the next politician, the next style of politician that will be coming to this house. Because there are no rules in our party room. There are procedures and there are traditions, but there's no one tradition that binds one party room to the next. And unless we know the procedures and how situations have been managed, choreographed, and the outcomes of those, that history becomes lost. His gift to our party was that granular detail that he has, and maybe those diaries that he has, let's hope that they don't get discarded and that they end up in the hands of a wonderful journalist that may fulfil Kevin's legacy in writing that final book in his memory. To Kevin Andrews, thank you for your friendship and your contributions to this place. To Margaret and the children, I cannot imagine the sorrow and the hurt that you will be enduring in the months and years ahead, but know that there is a Parliament that respects with unlimited capacity your husband, and that he has left behind a legacy in this place of amazing generosity and a gentleness that we should all live by. Vale, my friend.
I thank the member for his contribution. I understand it's the wish of honourable members to signify at this stage their respect and sympathy by rising in their places, and I ask all present to do so. I thank the Federation Chamber.
Federation Chamber to move that further proceedings be conducted in the House.
Is leave granted?
I second the motion.
Motion, please. Yeah, okay. Can you move that further proceedings be conducted in the House?
I move that further proceedings be moved in the House. Thank you, Chair.
The question is that further proceedings be conducted in the House. All those of that opinion say aye.
Aye. Aye.
The ayes have it, and I call the clerk.
Government Business Order of the Day number 1, Customs Amendment, Expedited Seizure and Disposal of Engineered Stone Bill 2024. Resumption of debate on the second reading.
The question is that this bill be now read a second time. I'll put the question. All those in favour say aye. The ayes have it, and I call clerk.
Second reading. A bill for an act to amend the Customs Act 1901 and for related purposes.
If no member wishes to consider the bill in detail, I will put the report question immediately. The question is that this bill be reported to the House without amendment. All those in favour? Aye. The ayes have it. The Federation Chamber is now suspended.